Cheers.
Now.
Starting now.
We're starting now. For everybody who didn't know. Cheers. Welcome to the NooK on the Voluntary Virtues Network. I'm Steve. I'm here today with Christy. Wes is making his debut.
Indeed. Nice to see you.
Matt.
Cheers.
John.
Peace.
And Mike.
Hoi hoi.
Yeah, a big group of us today. Today I'm drinking a coffee stout from Valley Center Brewery.
Ooh, I haven't heard anything from
really?
them. Are
There's
they
a
good?
Valley Center Brewery.
It's
Yeah.
good.
Really?
Riley got this for me. I like coffee stouts, and this is a good coffee stout. So
So does it have caffeine in it? Or just...
probably
taste of
not
coffee?
just the taste of the coffee.
Gotcha.
Matt and I brew once in a while, and we'll usually steep the coffee in the beer as we're brewing the other.
Preparation for boil is when we normally do it.
Right.
Obscure reference. There was a Drew Carey episode about that. How to do coffee beer. Yeah.
Really?
Was there?
Yeah.
Totally
yeah.
obscure.
It was before like Sparks and all that stuff. Yeah.
That was a little bit of but coffee beer, yeah, that sounds better than Sparks, I'll tell you that.
Definitely.
So what are you drinking, Matt?
I'm drinking Stone's 18th anniversary. The reason I'm drinking it is because I was given a 22 for free.
Ding 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 ding.
So I'm not going to turn down free beer. Still good. Yeah. I didn't like it as much, actually, when it first came out. I don't know how an IPA got better, but it's cool.
Hey, they have that Enjoy After. Maybe it's...
Is that an IPA?
Enjoy by, isn't it?
I like
Enjoy
it.
by.
They have an Enjoy After. I think that's an
There's
IPA.
an Enjoy After. I think it's some sort of special kind of IPA that I don't remember what they call it. I know it's well hopped, though. That's what I've heard.
Extra hoppy.
Yes, you got to blend hops well, though. If you screw up hops, you're going to screw the beer up.
Yeah.
John?
Staple, Synergy, Gingerberry, Kombucha.
Kombucha.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's the way. Fermented beverage of choice.
You ever get the ones with the chia seeds in there?
Yeah.
Very tasty,
Those are
aren't they?
good.
I had
They're kind of hard to
recently,
chew because they're
Yeah.
slippery suckers.
right. I
Yes.
recently had a master brew ginger, which is really
Oh,
good. It has a lot of a good ginger burn on the backside. It's real nice. Yeah.
Mike?
Ginger's pretty amazing.
It
I'm
is,
starting off
right?
with that. How does that relate to my beer? It doesn't. I'm drinking Liberty Ale by Anchor Brewing Company up in San Francisco. Bought it again. I've had it before. It's pretty solid. That's why I keep getting them. I have no complaints about it. It's a nice pale ale that's slightly more expensive and wonderful. So yeah.
So would you say the people that make that, are they classical liberals? Are they...
Haven't the
Laissez-faire
foggiest is probably just a
capitalists?
name that they put on there.
You might not want to
sadly.
look it up because you might want to not
Liberty's
drink their
kind of
beer
cool
because-
now, so
Yeah.
people
Yeah,
just use the throwing
you
a word
know,
around. You know?
Yeah, if I look it up, I'll probably be like bummed out. Like, oh, they don't really care at all. They was just a name. Womp, womp, womp.
Unlike Agris Ales.
Yes,
drinking
unlike
tea.
Agri
Yes, we're
Sales.
drinking tea.
Those guys are
Well,
cool.
yes,
Indeed.
there's nothing in there.
Ginger?
Because we talk too much.
You could have pretended,
Little
Christy.
tea.
Nah, we're not no talk show host bastards. They don't have anything in those mugs, those lagers.
So tonight, we were sitting around and we realized we've never straight out talked about the non-aggression principle on this show yet.
To the best of our recollection.
If we did, link it in the comments.
Maybe as it related to other
Yeah.
topics, but I don't think we've ever talked about the non-aggression principle as
A
the
topic.
main as the topic.
It's always been
And-
implied, right?
Yes.
Implicit in all the discussion has been that.
Right.
Yes,
I'm sure
exactly.
we've mentioned it plenty of times, but actually going over it I think is important for probably not the regular viewers, but people who are just getting into voluntarism. I think it's a very important topic. I'm sure they've heard it before, but to go further into it.
In case you stumbled on our show first, well, here it is. You know. Yeah.
If you hear now.
And congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, often referred to as the NAP.
Yes.
The non-aggression principle basically states that you should not aggress against another person or his property or her
Yeah.
property.
The initiation of
The
force is immoral, right?
Right.
That's definitely not the whole episode, guys.
Well, that was fun. What are we gonna do now?
I've heard it's
So-
also called the ZAP, right? Zero aggression principle.
Right.
I have
yeah,
heard
that's
that a
nice.
couple
What's the
times. Yeah.
Zap sounds a lot cooler,
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah.
Can
Well,
we
that kind of flirts with
Can we start
pacifism, maybe?
there?
No. I don't know. I'm just throwing that
Oh,
out
we
there.
can make up a new one.
No, does zap flirt with since you're
No,
talking
I
about
think it's
zero?
synonymous with NAP.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
pretty sure. We were
That was
looking
my
at the
understanding.
history of NAP and where it got coined and stuff, and it looks like, I mean, there's definitely hints of it throughout history. What was it, Epicurus?
Right.
Way back when, 300 BC or something. And then Thomas Jefferson seemed to have a more coherent understanding of it, but then Ayn Rand, I guess, is the one that really made it
Stitched it up.
specific, where she said, through the character of John Galt in Atlas Shrugged, thou shalt not initiate force through either physical means or fraud, which is kind of an indirect force, because a person is, you're trading with someone under false pretenses, right? They're taking, in a sense, taking from you forcibly that you wouldn't have had a trade if you would have known what was going on. So you're not supposed to do that. And that's how we have a free society. Like the precondition for a civilized society is for that level of respect for individual rights.
Reciprocity.
Yeah. So Jefferson talked about harm, and that some of these other theorists in history talked about harm towards others. And some of the 19th century individualist anarchists, like Bakunin and Tucker, talked about basically respecting other people's freedoms. And so that there's that boundary of like, you have the freedoms you want as long as you don't infringe on other people's freedoms. But it seems like Ayn Rand was the first one to really pin down, what does that mean? What is the nature of freedom? And you really can't define that unless you understand what non-aggression is, right? How you violate people's person and property.
And what's the nature of of a civil society? You know,
Yeah.
what is civil? What's being civil? You know, non-aggressing between people.
Could
So-
this kind of come down to like what they used to call common law? That the only things that were illegal would be like robbery, assault, fraud, rape,
Murder, rape, assault.
murder, rape,
Unless it's
assault.
done by
Proven
the
harm.
government, right?
Yeah, unless it's done by them,
State.
then it's cool. But generally, like those were the only things that were illegal for, going back to the Norman invasion of England, practically. And
Well, really, going back to the Roman days, you had
Yeah.
two different types of law. You had common law, or
Civil-
natural law,
civil.
which is what you're talking about, and then you had state law, which is
Civil.
an aggression against the state.
yes.
So if you didn't pay your extortion fee, or you harmed one of their stolen buildings or something, then they would.
So the difference would be that there's an actual victim pointing to there's
Right.
actual harm
In
done.
common law, there was an actual victim,
And the-
in
Civil.
huh?
That's the root of civil law, right? Is it goes that's
Oh.
Roman law,
Yeah,
civil law.
casuistry is, I believe, what it's called in Greek.
Sir, I believe you've harmed the state by urinating on the side of this marble building. We need to collect some money from you. And I guess that's how it started.
And actually, the English law came from the Roman law, which then translated to the American law that we have today, which is the idea that when you steal from another person, you're not harming that other person, you're harming the crown,
Oh,
which is-
wow.
which is where you get,
the state has-
anybody versus the state.
Yes,
And apparently the
state
bastards
has-
still do that in England nowadays. If you say, well, whom did I harm here? If you kind of do that whole approach in court, they'll actually point to a picture of the Queen on the wall and be like, oh, you injured the Queen. With a straight face, they'll say that. It's amazing.
Of course. Yeah.
I
full-on
mean, never go to
collectivism.
court in England.
I've heard stories about it,
anywhere.
over like, people have actually like recorded it, and they'd be like, it was recorded, not, audio, not video. So, but they would say like, no, the guy pointed to the picture of the Queen on the wall and said, you injured the Queen.
I kind of want to go back to this idea of fraud for a second.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about fraud, do you think that there's a bit of a gray area there? Like, for instance, suppose I sell you a product, and I don't tell you every single thing that I know about this product.
For
And
example, a car. So this is a common
Yeah,
thing,
sure.
right? Is it a lemon? How much work has been done on it? Is
Right.
it about to go, south really
And what do
quickly?
you call an initiation of force, really? Is one thing that I think can be a gray area. What exactly is an initiation, and when is it self-defense? When
Well,
is it?
intent would be I think is where I would start off with. Like, if the guy didn't know it had a, like, you know, to use an older car thing, like, the guy didn't know it had a bad carburetor. He didn't commit fraud upon you because he didn't know.
Yeah.
So it's intention. You know, if he knowingly knew, oh, that has a bad carburetor, I'm just going to forget to mention
That's
that, then it would be fraud. So I suppose that one can be reduced a little bit. But
So then, you know, with cars, they have the as is, sale as
Right.
is. So that's kind of a contract that
Uh-huh.
basically says, once you buy this,
leave
it's
the lot.
your responsibility to take care of it, right?
yeah.
So the market has a way to deal with that.
That's a good point.
But so informed consent seems to be the basic principle there legally. You know, did you inform the person of the things that you knew, so that the trade, the money that they gave you in exchange, is, you know, that fair win-win scenario. Now, obviously, in the marketplace, people have knowledge of what they're selling to other people that they may not have knowledge of. So there's those marketplace advantages for profits, right? Like at a
Similar to
swap meet,
Amazon.
if the person only knew how much this thing was really worth, you know, versus the price tag that I put on it. But that's just, you know, the buyer beware. Do your research and find the best deal out there, you know. And smartphones are a great resource for that, you know, trying to find good prices.
And, you know, talking about selling things as is, I mean, it's related, but if you go buy a car from an auto auction, they take that seriously, as is. They will give you the car with less than a quarter of a tank in it. Have a good day. The minute you drive it off that lot legally, it is not their problem. They take that seriously, as is. Yeah, some places you gotta.
Well, I think that's why I went to CarMax. I mean, this is a advertisement for CarMax, but because they had all the things in place that, you know, if it was wrong, I mean, they give me, you know, 7 days to actually return it. They give me 30, and they'll fix everything in the car and it was great. It was an awesome experience. So I think it's buyer beware. I made sure I went to a place where I could, you know.
So what
buy
you're saying
something.
is that the market could solve
Yeah.
those problems.
It
Yeah.
did solve it, yeah.
Yeah, playing to,
Yeah.
I guess the opposite would be like playing to authority for like, is this thing good? Will this hurt me? Please, government, tell me,
So-
sort of thing. Like,
so-
you know, yeah.
So maybe what we're saying is that a third party could be an arbiter, similar to how Amazon has plenty of people selling stuff on their market, and they oversee all of these transactions and somewhat handle them, depending. They have a policy and all that, but so instead of using the government to handle, let's say, like food, for instance, health and everything like that, to make sure wherever you're eating is clean and upkept and following a good, you know, whatever you want to call it, a process there. You could have a private organization do that. That's the thing. All these things that people want from the government, you could have them all done by private organizations that are paid for probably a hell of a lot cheap. I know, hell of a lot cheaper than the government charges for it, or not charges, steals for it.
Yeah, which brings us back to the thing of the civilized society. Isn't it on the IRS building in Washington, D.C. that says taxation is the price we pay for a civilized society?
Yeah, what is that? Is that
Wow.
Edmund Burke? Who is that? But it's an
Yeah,
Englishman
it
of
might
some
be.
sort that
Uh-huh.
said that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. Great propaganda. They actually found an old Roman mosaic that says something very, very similar. Not in those exact words, but it said something like roughly like that. They found some like old office and like it wasn't Pompeii, but it was one of those cities that had been thoroughly covered over, and they found a mosaic and whatever it was, some sort of tax office that said good citizens pay taxes or something like that. You know? So it's that propaganda's been going on for a while.
Donald Duck? Did they have Donald Duck then?
Are we talking about Scrooge McDuck or DuckTales? What's his name?
Those are good. Scrooge McDuck. And I know.
That's a poor voice, but
Yeah, that seems like to be one of the biggest violations of the NAP, right? That is the giant elephant in the room. And it
Yeah.
needs that kind of propaganda to say that we need to have taxation
Yeah.
in order to have a civilized society. Well, it begs the question, what is civilized when you're coercing people out of their time and money
You know what
and
it's
effort?
just like? It's just like any gang or mafia or whatever saying, you know what, you need some protection.
Pay up.
You just give
Yeah.
us some money
Right.
and it'll all be fine.
Yeah.
I think you've mentioned that before when you're in Italy.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
You park the car and next to the curb, and then a big, huge Italian guy comes up, you know, and he's like, hey, you know, pay, you know, he wants to pay, and you pay him, and he keeps your car safe. You don't pay him, you get your window busted, you know. And every curb has every sidewalk has one of those guys. You know?
Oh man, like that mafia cliche of going into like a storefront of some sort and saying like, it looks like maybe you might be in the need of some window insurance. It would be a shame if something were to happen here. You know, like that sort of a game. Yeah.
But that's exactly what the government does when he asks
Exactly. Yeah.
for taxes.
And they
Same shit,
say,
different
so
name.
what do people typically say when you talk to them about taxation being a violation of the non-aggression principle? What do they say?
Roads.
Roads?
Infrastructure.
So we
yeah.
need to coerce people in order to get stuff done in an economy.
And it's like,
Somehow entrepreneurs can't handle it, right?
and you,
I saw an excellent graphic the other day. It showed a picture of a car and talks about how all the engineers and planning and production went into creating this car. Then it has a road and it's like flat surface. Can't possibly be created without government force.
Exactly.
Or another one is to like watch Formula One, where they have a fixed budget and a fixed number of cars, and there's the safety crew, the organizers of Formula One, and they set the parameters, and engineers are always looking to shave ounces here, you know, new rubber
Well,
for tires,
right. A
new
new
this,
material
new
comes
that,
out,
to be able to get around the parameters, and they do it every year. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, we would be in flying machines. Isn't that the?
I've been
Oh, I
wanting
mean,
a
if it
jetpack since I was
weren't
like
for-
a small child. I
If it
want a
weren't
damn
for
jetpack,
intellectual
yeah.
property, that might be true.
Yeah.
That thing is intellectual
Over
property.
there in the
is-
cheap seats, we have a query.
Oh no! I mean, that last comment just made me really have to speak up about something I heard the other day about how they've actually someone has engineered rubber that like won't wear, so you never have to really replace a tire unless like you puncture it or whatever.
That's
Wow,
awesome.
How is that
And
possible,
they,
though?
Under some like code, some bullshit
Science.
code.
Science.
It's
Whole
code.
aggression
We're in
principle
bed with
coming back into play.
oil company
They
code.
ascertained that invention and just like canned it and won't let it like reach
It's
the
happened with a
market.
lot.
Because it was harmful
Because
for the
it's
roads
like-
or something?
It's harmful for like the roads and tire
Tear things
companies
up.
and God knows what else, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But so that's
So
just another example of how this
Tax revenues from
act of
tires.
aggression is taking shape and form. And
Yeah. And of course, they would claim that they're not aggressing, that
Right.
they're just imposing a rule that you have the choice whether to obey or not. It's your choice, right?
As Harry Reid says, it's voluntary, but if you don't pay them, you'll go to jail.
There
Some
you
people
go.
do go
So
to
it's
jail.
You,
about the
you,
nature
you don't
of-
go to jail. Some people go
Yes.
to jail.
That's it.
So, the
Always
question
good to
is,
post that somewhere around February. Yeah.
is coercion a violation of the NAP? You know?
I
So
think
threat-
so.
see,
threatening to punish
Yeah.
somebody.
Just the threat itself.
Mhm.
Just the threat itself.
Yeah.
Well,
The worst
that's
is
what
when
will make
people-
you change your actions. So yeah, to threaten somebody with like,
Well, and then you have to say how credible is the threat,
qualify.
too.
Yeah.
you have to, can you
Quantify.
qualify it?
Yeah.
If it's by an organization called government,
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Then
That's-
so-
without
yeah.
a doubt.
Yeah, that's,
dripping with coercion, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess we could
absolutely.
be, let's see, precise about this, because Rand had a quote from The Virtue of Selfishness, and this was kind of like taken out of the Atlas Shrugged playbook. So the precondition of a civilized society, contrary to what the government says, right, is the barring of physical force from social relationships. In a civilized society, force may be used only in retaliation and only against those who initiate its use. So that's the
Defense.
self-defense, right? So Rothbard kind of clarified that even more, because he said, wait a second, we can't have an entity called government in charge of, protecting us, or protecting our rights. This is what objectivism, as Ayn Rand outlined, holds, that we need to have a coercive monopoly called government that's voluntarily funded, not tax funded, right? But it still coerces people because you have no choice other than that particular entity, that group of people saying, we're going to provide justice services to everybody, and either you pay us or you don't get any services whatsoever. Like, there can't be anyone competing with government for those respective individual rights and, enforcing contracts and so forth. So Rothbard cleaned that up and said, we need to have a free market of justice agencies that are not in violation of the NAP. They're not claiming legalized jurisdiction over everybody, basically.
I think another thing that might be
But then won't they turn into warlords and take over?
what about a crowd-funded type thing where they're basically all funded by donations?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
see that
I
working
can see
too.
that working very well.
Yeah, and they're, I think that would make sense.
As a matter of fact, I listened to an episode of This Week in Startups, and the guy has got this crowdfunding site called Tilt, and it's open source, and it's got some really cool features for the API stuff.
And he paves roads.
Well, they had a crowdfunding thing for like a local neighborhood policing.
Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
what's that app?
Peacekeeper.
Peacekeeper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
I have. I think I listened to that guy interviewed on Anarchist, right? In-
I'm pretty sure he's been on there before.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Bayward found him and was like, "Hey, you're a cool guy. Could you be on my show?" Yeah.
Yeah. So here's Rothbard's interpretation. No one may threaten or commit violence, aggress, against another person or property. Violence may be employed only against the person who commits such violence. That is, only defensively against the aggressive violence of another. In short, no violence may be employed against a non-aggressor. Here is the fundamental rule from which can be deduced the entire corpus of libertarian theory. So that, I guess, appeared in Egalitarianism as a revolt against nature and other essays.
So could that be said that like Rothbard was the first person to attach the term libertarianism to it because
Perhaps.
like Ayn Rand didn't like libertarians, so that's a weird, interesting, completely off-topic sort of subject. We'll do that at one point, right? But yeah, it's so I mean, you couldn't say that Rothbard was a progenitor of it, but he brought that over to that idea of philosophy maybe more than Rand did, perhaps, in a way.
It seems like he was, kind of.
He
Well-
kind of universalized it, I think.
Mhm.
Whereas Rand had the one little holdout with the state.
Mhm.
Rothbard was able to complete that to say that this includes everybody, not just those of us who don't claim power over others.
Yeah, there's no
State sanction.
fallacy of self-exclusion. You're not exempt from this principle. And the principle, obviously, there's been debate about whether it's vulgar, right? The vulgar libertarian idea,
Mhm.
or you're just enforcing the NAP or advocating for it and you're not looking at the nuances and the contextual aspects. But, I mean, as a basic principle, that's what can actually dissolve the state. Once people renounce using force and people look at
Mhm.
government as this entity to do their bidding, essentially.
Exactly.
To
Yeah.
use, I mean, they've been aggressed against through the taxation regulation, so then they really have no qualms of using it to their advantage in the marketplace. And so this is kind of a real, the root of the problem in our society, politically at least. And of course it goes all the way back to the family because parents use coercion. We were talking about in
Yeah.
the kitchen. Parents use coercion against their children. So we grow up in this milieu where we're being forced to do things that we don't want to do.
Yeah. And not convinced. You have to.
Yeah, and
Uh,
threatened
we've
with
done-
punishment too. you
Yeah,
know?
we've done one on an episode on parenting, and we talked about how important it is to really work with your kids and explain to them why something is a good idea, and not force them to do it, and get them to realize, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes sense that they want me to do it this way, you know. And if
Yeah.
it's a bad idea, they might even tell you, hey, look, you're not seeing this, you know.
Mhm.
And I think something we were talking about earlier about how, like the NAP, you could be very, closed-minded about it and almost think of it in a weird like Spock sort of a way, for lack of a better way to describe it. Whereas like a new libertarian might say something like, well, if somebody walks onto your property, it's okay to shoot them. Wait a minute, wait. So
little
because somebody
imbalanced,
walked onto my property, it was justified for me to just shoot them? That's a violation of the non-aggressive principle. You can't just be like, oh, some person walked my property, it's okay to just blow them away. That's
It's
not right,
aggressive.
yeah. So that it's important to make that distinction of like, okay, well,
There was no harm done.
there was
That's
no
where
harm
really-
done. So yeah, they may have wandered onto this geographical
it's
location you call your property, but it doesn't mean that it's justified to
It's
then
important.
go. Yeah.
If there's no harm done, if nobody's been harmed, you should always try to solve that situation peacefully.
Exactly.
No matter how upset, emotional, whatever it is, If nobody's been harmed, then there's no reason to initiate any sort of force violence or anything.
So that would be the principle of proportionality, right?
Yes.
You can't use a disproportionate amount of force to remedy a situation of a rights
No
violation.
matter what they said, how emotional they got you.
Yeah, exactly. Erring on the side of goodwill too. Like if someone has been out in the woods and they're starving to death and they break into your cabin, and if you're not there, then I mean, they've obviously violated your property rights, but they can compensate for that. They'll pay restitution gladly. Now, if you're in the cabin, then it's a situation of like, okay, negotiation. Like, who is this person? How do you broach this situation where this person is, on their last leg? And if they're using force against you to get the food, then it's like a situation where your life is threatened. So then the self-defense issue comes up as well. But I think, as far as the non-aggression principle, trying to settle things as peaceably as possible is the way to go. And that's the exact opposite of what government does as a rule. It's a domination institution. So it's set up to punish people if they don't do what it says. And they've got numerous laws to enforce to try to keep that thing going.
And I suppose with government itself, there is no gray area like that, is there? Like we're talking about like, oh well, if somebody wanders on your property, like it's not cool to shoot them. You need to talk to them first and see what the situation is. Obviously, there's a good damn chance, based on most of humanity, that they didn't wander on your property to hurt you. But with government, it's like, you broke the law, fine. It's never like, oh well, you kind of sort of broke it. Let's okay, yeah, everybody's been pulled over where they've been let go at one point or another, but more often than not, there's no gray area with government. It's either you get a fine or you don't get a fine. There's no like, here's a warning.
Well, they have so many
Well,
laws
even
where there's
if-
no victim.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
even if you go through the court system and you're found not guilty of whatever bogus crime that they've charged you with,
They took your damn
they've
time.
still taken
Yeah.
your time and your energy and probably your money for
To
for-
which there is no recourse.
exactly.
So along the lines of any monopoly, legalized monopoly is going to provide the highest price so-called service and the lowest quality, right?
Yeah.
So there's no competition. There's no. I mean, the incentives are absolutely perverse in the legal system. So it's actually an injustice system.
And no market signal to correct it.
Mhm. And they really don't understand the NAP. They're never really taught it. They don't really have a curiosity
Oh, I don't
for it
think
because
they-
it
does.
really
It
ends
goes
their,
against what their modus operandi is. That's
Yeah.
not, they won't get things done if they. Didn't
Well, there
believe
was
in the
I
government.
think empathy can be really important in these situations too, though. I was listening to one of your podcasts where your guest, I forget who it was talking about his issues with business license.
Oh yeah, that's a popular one. I think it's 175, Complete Liberty Podcast.
Yeah.
Barbara was her name, right? She was like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bureaucrat
yeah.
in Carlsbad. Yeah.
I respect that you remember the number.
Yeah, that's
Well,
good memory there. I wouldn't be able to
That
do
is
that.
Quite a
impressive.
few people have remembered that one. It's Mike
Oh,
that was a co-host on the show, and he told his story of how he was being aggressed against because they were wanting to know how many years had gone by that he didn't have a business license, so they could tax him on all those past years and stuff.
Figure it out yourself, guys.
So he used empathy and tried to understand what was alive in this person that was asking this, and what was the level of fear, what was going on at her work, and all that. And she basically, stopped inquiring about that, dropped that issue as a result of him just kind of being real with her about what's going on, and also the need to respect others. That's a need that's sacrificed by people in government. Like they're in an institution that requires them to sacrifice the need to respect others, and that really puts them in a difficult position emotionally. So they tend to get defensive and counterattack and hang up the phone. If you listen to Mark Stevens' No State Project,
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
got a bunch of those.
yeah, he plays those things where he's talking to them, asking really important questions, and they end up hanging up. So empathy can be helpful to understand just how much anxiety and fear and upsets in the person that's in this domination institution that's having a really hard time coming to terms with the truth of the matter.
So they actually changed their action from that conversation?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never heard that before.
But it makes
Yeah.
me wonder,
When-
like, with the non-aggression principle, like, so if there was to be, like, some sort of, let's call it, I don't want to say machine, but let's say, it becomes aware of itself in the world. It becomes sentient. Like, the non-aggression principle would still apply to a sentient machine, right? That is aware of itself and its
Yeah.
surroundings and all that.
One would hope so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, it would.
Yeah.
Just like my opinion, man.
Well, I mean, and so, if we continue on that course, would you, if you were into such a thing, would you be able to have, sex with it? I mean, is that...
What if two robots?
Well, if,
Well,
if
yeah.
a
Hold
robot...
on, guys. Hold on,
Are you
guys.
talking about a robot
Hey,
right
hey,
now?
hey, hey.
No, I
Is
mean,
that what you're
that does
talking
apply,
Hold
but
on,
no,
hold
it's
on.
a different...
We can't talk about this. We're out of time.
Ah, shit.
Ah.
We'll have to try this another episget.
Next time.
All right,
We'll get
take
to
it
it
easy,
next
guys.
We will get to it eventually.
Cheers,
Have a
good
good
night.
night.